I haven't had a lot of jobs where I've worked for other people, and most of the things that I've done in my life are things that like I work in kitchens because I love food, right? I love gymnastics or athletics, and so I found a job teaching it, right? Then I got sponsored as a skater, and then I spent my life skating. So it was like, find something that you like and figure out how to do it and try to do it well, and maybe it'll turn into something.
That was Azikiwee Anderson, founder of Rize Bakery. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city unlike any other. My wife and I first discovered Rize Up at the Clement Street Farmers Market, most likely back in 2020. We'd been seeing posts about a Black-owned bread company that rose out of the aftermath of George Floyd's murder that summer, and we had to get in on that. From the first sourdough packed in a paper bag that we tried, we knew that Rize Up was special. In this episode, meet Z, as his friends call him. He'll share the story of how he made his way from New Orleans to the Bay as a kid. And he'll walk us through his life up to the point of his eventual move to San Francisco, roughly 20 years ago. Here's Z.
I always say that, the songs, I Left My Heart in San Francisco, is really the way that I felt for all the period of time that I wasn't here. We came here under duress. My mom was a battered wife, was beat really bad by my father. My father was a famous drummer. He drummed for the Neville Brothers for a period of time. And when he was out on tour, he got addicted to heroin. And when he came back, there was a lot of problems. And then he just kind of lost his stuff. And, he went from being this beautiful, kind, nice man to someone who was not doing as good because of, influences. And that destroyed our family. And so the battered wife shelter knew that either it was going to end bad, right? They thought it would end bad. So they put my mom with me, my brother and sister, all under the age of 5. They put us on a bus and they sent us here.
And from where?
From New Orleans.
Okay.
So,
you said all under 5. How old were you at this
I was
time?
5.
I'm
the eldest.
You're the oldest?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have
brothers and sisters? My brother would have been 2, and my sister would have been just born.
Okay, wow. And do you have memories of any of this? Do you have memories of New Orleans or that?
Yeah,
And that duress, like you said,
Yeah, I think when you've been through really traumatic things, your brain kind of builds a scar, and I think some people lock onto it, and that's all they can think of. And the way I think I dealt with it is it just disappeared. So I remember a lot of things, and every once in a while, as I get older, I'll be, walking down the street and I'll catch a smell of something, and then I'll get flooded with memories I don't really remember. And
smell memories are strong. Yeah, they can be very strong. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm kind of in a different world when I was a little, but I don't have a lot of context.
Right.
So yeah. And then I think in order to deal with a lot of things, there's survival mechanisms that you learn to cope with. I think some people try to forget because it's too much.
Right.
I think that I am a happy person because I realize that if I can get through the worst stuff, I'm going to still be okay.
You can handle it at anything now.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I still, it's in there. But I think part of the way that I deal with it is trying to be helpful and kind towards other people. I think when you've had really bad stuff happen, you just know that life is kind of short and you just want to not do that to other people.
Right.
So
that's a form of forgiveness, right? Not forgiving what happened, but just paying it forward. It's great. Or maybe grace is a better word.
Yeah. I just feel like I want to I think I've thought a lot more about wanting to be a good part of the world than maybe some others have.
Right.
And so it kind of occupies a lot of who I am. I just don't want to be a bad part of the world. Even the way I started Rise Up, the murder of George Floyd, like, broke my heart. I was, I couldn't get through a day where I wasn't crying. I really don't like the way the world portrays or sees people like me. Mm-hmm. And I was having a hard time coping with that. And I realized that, when I spend all this time and energy trying to do something that I think is beautiful, and then like a little kid comes and they're excited to get bread from this 6'3" guy who they the world would tell them to be afraid of me.
Right.
But for some reason, bread seems to take that away. I feel like Santa Claus sometimes, right? Like, people show up when they used to show up at my front door and they'd be so excited to get it and so smiley. And I'm like, the way that they smile at me and how excited they are is the way that I am towards other people. So I'm like, it's this really good feedback loop. The thing that makes me happy makes other people happy.
Right.
And I feel like I'm a part of the community, and I feel like because I care about a lot of, like, how the bread affects them, how the bread affects their body, like the chemicals that go into food, because I have all this thought and care, it shows up and it feels like love, right? So I feel like I can make the world better, like one beautiful loaf of bread at a time. And it sounds corny because, like, oh, you just make bread, but I'm like, to me, I'm like, we make beautiful bread, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing something else. And that thing, I think, is beautiful, and I think that's the thing that people feel, and part of the reason why people have been supporting us, So
right on.
Yeah,
okay.
I kind of went off topic there. Sorry.
No, all good. It's my job to get us back. So let's get back to that the journey out here. You said California. So where did y'all end up?
Oh, we to San Francisco.
Right, to San Francisco.
Yeah, and then when we got here, we didn't have anywhere to go, and no one seemed to know that we were going to be here. So we were.
Do you know why San Francisco?
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you didn't have people, it's
we didn't have any
curious.
people. No, I mean, they sent us to a battered women's shelter out here to get us as far away probably as they could.
Right. Okay.
I do think California, like going out west, like it seems like another world to people. So like the picking up and coming out and following us and trying to find us in San Francisco probably was part of the reason why they sent us here.
Okay.
Because not really something that a lot of people would do.
Right. Very different circumstances, but I grew up in Texas, and it was probably right around the time that I started skating as a early teen, skateboarding, that I was like, California just seemed fucking magic.
That's a draw. Yeah.
And a million worlds away.
Yeah.
So I think I relate in a way to what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah, definitely I feel like, I don't think they were like, oh, it'll be dreamy for you guys. I think they were just like, let's get you safe. But then
it's far and it's different.
Yeah, as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think when you're in like New Orleans, like the idea of going to New York seems kind of, even though it's far, it seems closer. When you say, I'm going to send you out to California, it's like another world, right? So, and it really was. We got here and we really survived off of the kindness of others, strangers, like we basically stayed in the bus stop for weeks. The gentleman that worked there, he used to bring his lunch and he would give us his lunch so that my mom could feed us.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so even like a lot of people don't know this, I don't really say it, but the brown paper bag, that's what that signifies to me. Like all of our bread comes in this brown paper bag, right? So like it was old school. I mean, it would have been in the 80s, right? So this man would come up and give us his brown paper bag with his lunch, and that was like all the food we got for the day. So
sack lunch.
So
I love that.
It has a very simple but like a powerful meaning. I think as we get fancier and fancier and slicker, people care so much about the marketing and all these other things where I'm like, the homeliness of this like basic, simple little brown satchel, it means a lot. Feels like something special to me.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for that reason.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
Let's say. Yeah.
And
okay.
I think like when you put things in plastic instantly it's like one-use plastic. Like, you're not making the world better. You're just like part of the problem, even if it's just in a little bit, even if it's just to sell your product. But I feel like paper is biodegradable, and it has a feel to it, like a texture. So all those little things kind of like, they feel beautiful to me.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's biodegradable. It's trees.
Yeah.
And plants, and what is
Yeah.
bread?
Yeah.
Plants.
Try to keep it simple.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so y'all are at the bus stop, kindness of strangers.
Yeah, so we
What
finally got a hold of the people that are supposed to come get it, or they finally kind of found out that we slipped through the cracks. They were like, what do you mean you don't have them? We sent them weeks ago, kind of thing. And so they finally found us. We found them, and then they took us to the shelter, and then they basically started trying to help my mother, see what her new life could be, what it should be. Helped her try to get into school.
Is this an
helped with
organization
counseling.
here?
Yeah.
What was it? Do you remember what it was called? You don't
Yeah.
know. That's fine.
I was 5.
Right. Okay,
I've
yeah.
looked for it, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things like, like it's kind of traumatic. I don't want to tell my mom, "Hey, Mom, where was a place?"
Happy Friday, by the way.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
place that came and got us. Where was it?
Right.
I do know things like, they gave her like a bus pass, and they gave her a little map, and she would get on a bus, and she would ride a bus line all the way around from where she got on all the way as far as it would go out each end, and she would just write down things that were on that bus line. Like, this bus line takes me to the
Spots.
beach, and
Yeah.
it goes by the post office, and and that's how she learned the city.
She made her own map.
Exactly.
I love that.
And I've actually used that when I've traveled. Like, people think, "Oh, what are you going to do?" They have these hop-on, hop-off buses where you get on to good transit, and you'll learn what's going on in the city really quick, So, so she integrated herself here, retooled what she thought her life could be.
With 3 young children in tow.
Yeah, she was very heartbroken and very stressed. And but she tried her damnedest to pull herself back together and put herself through college. And
I mean, it's not enough to say strong woman. I don't
Yeah.
know your mom.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, I'm like,
yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, and I think definitely, like, you get outside yourself. It's like, it was no longer. She told me in the past, it's no longer about her. It was just making sure that we were all okay.
Right.
And so, even if she wanted to fall apart, like, she just was like, I can't. Right. So, yeah, it's heavy stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, shout out to your mom.
Yeah. Hi, Mama.
Yeah. Okay. And then what's next?
Well, yeah. So we lived here until I was 11, and then
You started off going to school here?
Yeah. Where we could afford to live in San Francisco during the 80s was not the greatest neighborhoods. And then when we started to get a little bit older, my mom realized that she needed it's one thing to be like a cute little kid in a bad area. It's another thing to be like a young adult in a bad area. So she was like, I need to get you guys to a place that's safer.
Yeah.
So she moved us up to Chico, California.
Okay.
It partly because she had read an article or been given an article that said Chico was the safest place in America.
Oh.
It got voted the safest place in America. So, so she moved us up there, and Chico is probably really safe if you're a little white kid. It's not really that safe.
And not a college freshman. It's a little.
It was a little. It was not the greatest for us, but like, we learned about a lot about who we were. We learned a lot about what we would tolerate, wouldn't tolerate, what we wanted in our lives. And I basically graduated from high school, and I think the day after I graduated, I left and moved to Santa Rosa. Okay. Where they had a really good junior college, and that's where I kind of became. I wanted to be back here in the city. That's where the Left Your Heart in San Francisco thing kind of came from. I couldn't really afford to be in the city, so I ended up in Santa Rosa, and that was close enough to the city that I could come back and forth. Yeah. And then I was going to school, and I was a gymnast. I taught gymnastics.
Oh.
And then
When did that start for you?
I started in high school. I started doing gymnastics. I basically saw the Olympics, and then I heard that there was a gymnastics place not too far from my house. So I used to ride my rollerblades down there, and and I would just sit and watch.
Yeah.
And I didn't fit in at all. And they were just kind of like, people would ask me like, "Are you here for a reason?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just watching." And then I asked the guy, like, how much are classes? And we were broke, so I couldn't afford that. So I said, like, if I sweep the floors or if I come in and work, would you teach me? And finally, one of the men's coaches was like, "Sure, I'll do that." And so he started teaching me, and the next thing you know, I was on the team. And
in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I learned a bunch, and then when I left there and went to Santa Rosa, I found a job as a coach.
What kind of, within gymnastics, what were you doing?
Everything.
All of it?
All around, yeah.
Okay.
I competed all around for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by a lot of athletes.
Gymnastics is crazy.
Especially, and I'm like most people, I see the gymnastics every 4 years, like when it comes up in the Olympics, but I'm just like, God damn. Because it's just you and your body.
Yep. And a lot of training.
Maybe there's poles, maybe, but it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did all that shit.
Yeah. I competed high bar, vault. My best events were high bar and vault and floor.
Okay.
Those are the less strength events. So when it comes to like iron crosses on the rings and stuff, like it definitely helps if you're like 5'1" instead of 6'3". So I
Nothing you could do to adjust that.
Oh, I mean, physics is a pain.
It's a bitch.
Yeah. So throwing my weight to strength ratio wasn't as good as some, but I was very agile and I was very flippy, so I could do a lot of stuff. Also, it was one of those things where, everybody I was competing with had started when they were 4, and I started when I was like 15 or 16. So it was.
They had been groomed.
Yes, they had been in it for a long time. So I got really good really fast, but I still was a little rough, which is actually part of the reason why I think 6'3" dude with dreadlocks, in gymnastic tournaments, people just didn't know what to think of me.
Right.
I would show up and they'd be like, "Who is this monster coming in here?" And so when I started teaching gymnastics, it was like that's actually how I became a professional rollerblader, because I had kids that came in, or young adult males who came in who wanted me to teach them how to do flips so they could do it on their skates. And I was like, they looked across and it was like normal guy, normal lady, me. And they're like, "Hey, buddy, will you teach us how to do flips?" And I was like, "Sure,"
Yeah.
And for me, it didn't matter if I was teaching one person or 3 people. I'm like, as long as you can pay for the hour class, I'm like, I'll teach all you. So
put me through college.
Yeah, I'm like, that was cool. So I started private lessons with them, and
this is in Santa Rosa. Sorry.
No, this is at Roanoke Park Gymnastics in Roanoke Park.
Okay.
But I was living in Santa
That's
Rosa.
Up there, yeah.
Shout out to Roanoke Park Gymnastics. So I started teaching and teaching them how to do flips, and then one of the guys was fairly like punk rock, and he was kind of like, "This isn't what I saw in the videos. You're just teaching us how to do like gymnastic-y stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I am a gymnastics coach." I don't know. So he's like, "Well, that's not what I saw in the videos." So I said, "Well, why don't you bring me the video? I'll watch the video, and if I can teach you that, then I'll teach you. And if I can't, then we can stop."
Yeah.
So he brought me this video, and it was people doing amazing tricks on rollerblades, and I loved rollerblading, but I didn't know you could skate a half pipe. I didn't know you could do flips.
I was going to ask if it was ramp or street or what it was.
All of the above.
All of it, yeah.
So I started watching the videos and just totally like sucked my brain in.
Yeah.
And so then I started teaching them what I saw in the videos, and then I started doing it, and then I got sponsored, and then that became my life. Like I was like, "Wait, you're gonna pay me to skate? You're gonna send me to different countries to skate?" I'm like, "This is the best thing ever." And as being somebody who had been, broke my whole life, I'm like,
right.
It seemed like a dream.
A ticket.
Yeah, I was like, you know, I was the kid that used to like look at National Geographics and be like, one day I want to go there, and everybody would kind of laugh, you know, and then next thing you know, I'm like in Germany or, you know,
ask where you
stuff
went.
like that. And yeah, they flew me all over the place.
And you're like 20, early 20s?
Yeah, I would have been 20. I was probably like 21 then.
Dang.
Yeah,
Dang.
20, 21. And then by the time I was like 23, 24, I was like fully sponsored and it was like my full-on life. And then, you know, it just, I built skate parks. I did all sorts of things. So yeah.
Up there, up north.
Yeah. No, yeah, I owned my own skate park for a period of time. I built my own skate park.
Just for rollerblade or for all purpose?
For all purpose.
Yeah, bikes and skateboards and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I was a rollerblader and everybody I knew was a rollerblader.
Right.
So you could call it a rollerblading park because there's some parks where you go where they're like, oh, you can't BMX here, or there's some places you go where they're like, oh, you can't do this here. I let anyone in. You just had to be respectful and cool. But most of the people that knew me, they were all rollerbladers. So then, like, other people would show up and be like, what? Where did this come from? Because we were like in some nondescript, like, backbones, like little alleyway spot. And then you would open up a 20,000 square foot, you know, building. It was actually, it wasn't 20,000, but like 5,000 square foot building. And we had all these ramps.
Big.
Yeah. And it was just cool because, you know, when it was raining or when it was really hot, we had a place to be. And people got really good and then they got sponsored. And it was fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about pay it forward.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, but also going back to those early gymnastic lessons and then rollerblading lessons, a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak early in your life?
I guess so. I mean, I haven't had a lot of jobs where I've worked for other people. And most of the things that I've done in my life are things that I, you know, like I worked in kitchens because I love food, right? I love gymnastics or athletics. And so I found a job teaching it, right? Then I got sponsored as a skater and then I spent my life skating. So it was like find something that you like and figure out how to do it and try to do it well, and maybe it'll turn into something. And
hell yeah.
So I guess I'm a serial monogamous when it comes to finding a passion and then trying to become really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I operate in a similar way, and I've been accused of binging.
Yeah.
I call it focus.
I have a super focus.
Right? It's like
I'm hyper focused.
just because I find something I like and I dig
Yeah.
deep into it. Sounds like
I don't know what ADHD. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Wait, what were we talking about? No.
Yeah. No, I'm hyper focused.
I want to know where, besides Germany, you went and like what you must have been thinking, like your journey up to that point. You know, kind of like you've mentioned a couple times you didn't have a lot of money. You had to kind of make your own way.
Yeah.
And now you're like in other parts of the world.
Well,
That must have been awesome.
I think the coolest gift that I had by going through the stuff that I went through when I was younger is I didn't need very much to be happy, right? So I think sometimes when you have everything and you realize you're still not happy, it's very hard on your mind. Right? But like my superpower was if I had $5 and someone let me sleep on their floor, I was fine, and I was enjoying it, and I felt so lucky that I got to live this cool life and go anywhere or do anything, right? So my perspective, in some ways, can be infectious, right? Because like I learned that if you need a bunch of stuff to be happy, and everything has to go right for you to be happy, you're never going to be happy.
Yep.
And so I just was very, I was very appreciative, right? I was very thankful. Like when people were like, we flew you and you're going to stay in a room with 4 other people, I was kind of like, great. Right. I'm like, I don't got to sleep outside. That's great,
Yeah.
And so.
Well, it's the opposite of fame and fortune, kind of, right? It's like, that's an aspiration for a lot of people because it's a narrative. It's like, there, but it's like, not necessarily going to make you happy.
Yeah. Well, I think that's easy to say when you have food in the fridge and you have a house to stay in, right? Like when you don't have anything, it's kind of like, well, I would definitely like to not struggle. right? So
Right.
so I'm not flippant in the way that I think of it. I just also know that if I have the bare minimum, I still am okay, right? Where some people, it's like, if I don't have this, I'm not okay.
Right.
And so it's that gateless gate. If you need the thing in order to be okay, you probably need to work on something else.
Right.
Right. It's those things don't make you happy.
Right.
Right. How you feel inside in your own kind of still quiet is kind of what makes you happy.
Right on.
And then it's not what you can get, it's what you can give. Right. There's a lot of a lot of my happiness comes out of the reciprocal nature of giving to others and seeing their joy makes me happy. That's stuff that no one can take from me.
Totally.
Right? Whether it's giving knowledge, whether it's giving time, whether it's giving care or love, like the more you give, what do you know? The more you kind of have in a certain way.
And I'll just say for the record, last time we met, you gave me a loaf of bread, and that made me and a bunch of people in my life happy as
Oh,
fuck.
that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, that Morris loaf. God damn. Okay. All right, so you're up just not even an hour north of San Francisco, and you're a pro rollerblader. You're traveling the world. What's next?
Well, I always wanted to get back to San Francisco. So as I got a little bit older and kind of got my stuff together, I started, having, better paying gigs or being better with my money. I had a couple things happen that allowed me to be able to afford to move into the city.
Mm-hmm. And you were still up in living in Santa Rosa?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a moment where I was making enough to live in San Francisco, but I was gone so much that the idea of spending San Francisco rents to then never be here seemed like a bad idea.
No sense at all. Yeah.
So then when I started to do more business-minded things where I was going to be home more often, then I wanted to kind of be part of the city and be moving and shaking. So then I moved to the city. And
what year was that?
Let's see. That would have been 2003.
Okay, so you're coming up on 30.
Yeah.
You're in your late 20s, yeah.
Yeah, maybe somewhere. Yeah. I was just about. Yeah, I was just 29, almost 30, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do when you landed here? Where did you land?
I found a spot in between Van Ness and Polk on Bush Street.
Okay.
Yeah, and at that time they called it the Tender Knob.
Oh yeah.
Which I always thought was hilarious. But yeah, it was.
I don't think it's either.
Yeah, it's
just Van Ness.
Yeah.
Or Polk.
Or, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I live right off Polk Street. So.
Right.
Yeah, and I moved in the city, and at that time, I had a small distribution company for rollerblading products.
Okay.
And so we moved that into the city, and I helped start a little boutique in Lower Haight called Destructure.
Around rollerblading?
Yeah, it was
shop?
rollerblading, twin tip skiing, art, basically.
Nice. Where on Haight was that?
Haight and Fillmore, right around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's an awesome
Love it over
neighborhood.
there.
I just and so I did that, and then the 2008 kind of collapse kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
And since we had a distribution company, we had sent a bunch of things overseas to our distributor, and then they just didn't pay.
Oh,
and it
oops.
And it caused calamity.
Yeah.
So then I spent several years trying to. I probably should have just filed bankruptcy, but I felt like that was dishonest. So I just spent a lot of years working on paying everybody back who we owed, because when you make a whole lot of stuff and you ship it overseas and then they don't pay you, then you can't pay your people. so we
how that works.
dug ourselves out of the hole, and just to all the vendors, because I felt horrible.
Yeah.
And then
You must have had employees then.
Huh?
Did you have employees at the shop?
I did,
Yeah.
but not a lot.
Yeah.
It was a much smaller thing. Yeah, and then over a period of time, I just realized that I should probably focus on like my family and myself, and just like all of the idea of who I was and what I was doing kind of was all in flux. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but it definitely was a crisis.
No, and you're like becoming an adult.
Yeah.
And maybe it was accelerated by what happened in 08, 09.
Yeah.
That stuff in your specific situation. But
Well, yeah, and then there's nothing like realizing that you can't be Peter Pan if you have little kids.
that was Azikiwee Anderson. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, Z will share the story of how Rize Up Bakery came to be. Part 2 drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. And also, be on the lookout for a bonus episode about this weekend's Color Your Mind Festival in Yerba Buena Gardens. That bonus episode drops tomorrow. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.